Hi, and welcome back to part 3 of the Werewolf video tutorial series from BlenderCookie.com. This is Jonathan Williamson, and I'm going to pick up right where we left off on the previous part by going in and sculpting the human side of things. I know that a lot of you are very eager to get in and actually do the transformation on the werewolf itself, but you got to be a little bit patient, and we're going to do one more section just to sculpt the human side, and then we'll go in and actually do the transformation, so we'll definitely get there, I promise. It'll just take a little bit more time. So what we're going to do is we're just going to jump right on over to the human head. And just in order to save memory and such, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and save out a second file here. So this is Werewolf part 03, and I'm just going to go ahead and save out another file. Whoops, not like that though. And I'm just going to save this as _human. And so this will be the human head side of things. And if you remember, our final sculpting level is going to be level 5 on the werewolf head. And on the teeth, we're going to go up to level 7. And so we just want to keep these in mind, because now what we're actually going to do, since I'm working on my laptop here and I don't have a lot of memory, and actually I think this is like my 4th or 5th time recording this part of the tutorial actually, because I've been having problems with, I believe, actually running out of memory, and so things are crashing and causing me to start over. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and now just delete these 3 pieces. So just hit X and delete, because we really don't need them for this part of the tutorial, and then we'll be able to just import them back in at a later point in time. Because if you remember, if we go over to layer 1, we can see our original base mesh for the, for the human head, and so we want to just use this to sculpt on. So I'm first just going to select this, and then we can go ahead and begin sculpting. It's just going into sculpt mode. And then the first thing that I want to do is just by hitting G to use my grab brush, I'm going to work with the proportions just a little bit to kind of rework a little this to get a little better proportions. Since right now it has a little bit more of the proportions of, say, like a goblin or something like that, whereas I want more of a human mesh. And now we're not going to be going for anything super realistic. We want something maybe that's a little bit stylized, but we definitely want something that's going to give us a satisfactory result. So you'll notice too that I'm using my grab brush with the a sharp curve, as you can see right here. And I actually like this when working with a low resolution mesh like this, because it gives me more control of the individual points rather than just grabbing everything around it. And so this way I can get a little bit better control. And so I'm just doing a little bit of reshaping around the mouth here, better to show some of the teeth and such. We're not going to do a whole lot of sculpting on the actual teeth, mostly because a lot of that won't be shown. We might just sculpt the front few teeth and just leave it at that, and then the rest will actually just form themselves as we go through the transformation process. And so we really don't need to sculpt too much on those. We just want to get just enough for the effect to work. Okay, and maybe that's a little bit too wide. Pull some of that back up. And that looks pretty good. Okay, I've repositioned. Whoops, I've got a key stuck down. One moment. Okay, I'm also repositioning the ear just slightly, as it was a little bit too high. If this is the center of the head right here, then the eyes are right there. And so we need to move the top of the ear down to line up with basically the top of the pupil. And then we also want to go ahead and grab the whole top of the head, which first I'm going to switch over to a smooth curve right here. And then we'll just pull that up a little bit. Remember, we're just left click and dragging, or in my case, I'm just putting the pen down on the tablet and drawing across. Do a little bit more shaping there, a little shaping there. Pull that down. And that all starts to look pretty good. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and save that, leave where it's at, and let's go ahead and add in another level. So we'll go to multi-resolution modifier, and then we're just going to click subdivide once. And we want to try and do everything that we can at each individual level before moving on. This way we can kind of avoid some of the problems that we ran into with the werewolf head whenever we switched back resolutions. That's something to keep in mind, is that one of the problems with the Blender sculpting system right now is that it really doesn't like it when you go down a resolution and sculpt on that. It wants you to sculpt only on the highest level. And so even though this isn't ideal, what it means is just that we need to be sure that we do all of our sculpting on, or as much sculpting as possible on the current level before we go up a notch. And so what I'm doing now is I just have my draw brush, which you can access just by hitting D, or choose it from the menu here, and it's Sculpt Draw, which is kind of odd rather than just Draw. And I believe the reason being is that there's actually another brush called Draw that's used for the painting system. And so in order to avoid conflicts within the structure, we have Sculpt Draw. Okay, so I'm just doing some very basic sculpting here, just to start kind of laying out some of the shapes. And we're not doing a whole bunch, mostly just kind of getting some subtle hints. I'm pushing the eyes back quite a bit, just to start pushing back for the top of the eye. This right here is going to be basically the brow level, so we'll be sure to raise that up and then push this area back. And it's okay to go a little further than you would initially or actually want to sculpt it, because then you can very easily just use your smooth brush by holding down Shift and just drawing across it and to smooth it back out. And that way you get more of an averaged result rather than either the extreme or not enough. And so we're just getting kind of pushing some of the points around just a little bit, not doing a whole lot. Maybe I'll go and use my grab brush again and just shape the ear a little bit, get a little bit more of what I want the final shape to look like. And that starts to look pretty good. Okay, maybe I'll pull the back in just a little. And remember, of course, I'm sculpting with symmetry on. And that looks pretty good. I can't do a whole lot more on this level, so I'm going to go ahead and subdivide one more. And each time I want to be sure to save my file as frequently as possible, particularly since I have been dealing with a lot of crashes. You notice here I'm sculpting around the nose, kind of push that out a little bit. I'll push the nose itself out. And I can always just do a smooth path by just holding down Shift. If you need to adjust any of the settings on your smooth brush, simply hit S, and then adjust any of the settings on there, and then all of those settings will then be applied anytime you hold down Shift. So if you need to, say, take down the strength or anything like that, then you can do so very easily. I'm going to switch back to my draw brush and keep going. Maybe I'll add in a little bit more volume to the neck areas here, a little bit. I don't want to do too much because I'm going to do a lot of the detailing work just with my clay brush, but the draw brush is good for working with the general forms. And so I'm going to pretty much, here in just a second, I'm going to switch back to the clay brush to begin building up all my details and things like that. Okay, so this is actually looking pretty much right where I want it. Maybe I'll sculpt in a little bit more for the brows there. Maybe push back a little bit more for the eyes. And that looks pretty good. Okay, so we can very clearly start to see what's starting to come together here. Although I might go ahead and push back the whole corner of the mouth just a little bit. There we go, that looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and subdivide it again. I'm also going to save my file. And now I'm going to switch to my clay brush, which at the moment still has the clay strips texture on it, which, if you remember, we just used, even though you can't see it here because the preview is having some trouble. If you remember, it's just a solid white square texture, which then has a maximum curve set to it, so we kind of get some texture applied to the brush. This works really well for building up details and things like that, and so I'm going to go ahead and use it for the time being, although I may disable it at some point or another. But I'm going to go ahead and increase my strength a bit. And now what I want to do is I'm just going to start kind of working on some of these forms to build them up. So for example, around the lips here, I'll bring the upper lip out to the bottom lip just a little bit. I want to work on the chin area, so I'll draw in around like this. get kind of these muscle flows right in here. Then I'll draw in the chin itself. If I use a larger brush, I can affect a larger area, but also get a bit of a smoother effect. And obviously right now this is far too strong in some of these areas, and so I may need to do some reshaping, but that's okay. And so what I actually also really like to do, after I add in, say, a little bit more volume in here, a little bit more right in there, something that I really like to do at this point where I have enough detail or enough mesh structure to begin doing some detail work is I like to use my crease brush, which, if you remember, is Shift-C, and then allows us, just if we hold down Control, to just start drawing in some creases that will show, it actually works really good for drawing in eyelids and things like that, but we can also use it to start mapping out our mesh. So around the corner of the nose, we'll draw in some creases, we'll draw down the muscle flow there, right through here, we'll map that out in there, around the chin, bottom of the lip, maybe around the cheekbones, down the cheeks, around the jawbone there. And so we can use it to start kind of drawing out all the different details on our mesh to get a better idea of how everything is going to look. And I'm basically just using the default settings on it. You can increase or decrease the pinching any way that you want. Right here, you can increase the auto smoothing, just like any of the other brushes. So it starts to work really well for doing stuff like this. Now that I have some of that laid out, I'm going to go ahead and switch back to my clay strips brush just by hitting C. And I'll add in another layer or another level here in just a little bit. But first I want to kind of work on some of these forms. Just try and get everything smoothed out a little bit better. Get a better approximation of where everything's going. So here on the nose, just kind of reshape that a little bit. Reshape this. Push some of this area back because it was coming out too far. Same thing right in here. Bring that out. Push that in. So I'm just holding down Control anytime I want to push something in. Smooth that out. Smooth that. I want to bring the upper lip past the bottom lip a little bit so it looks like it almost overhangs. So I'll draw through right there, and then I'll draw in right here. So I'm holding down Control, and then I'll also smooth that a bit. Add a bit more volume to the bottom lip here just by drawing along the top edge of it and some around the bottom edge here. And draw in a little bit more form right in there and a little bit more right in here. I kind of draw down the center of the neck there to get some of that, the kind of fleshy feeling. Same thing, just right through here. I can also draw in the tendon that goes along the muscle right along here from the back of the ear down to the center of the neck. Then it gets smaller right at the base. I can kind of draw in some of this muscle right in here by just pushing this area back, maybe smoothing that out a bit, and then adding in a bit more volume right on the edge there for the edge of this muscle that you see. I'll do the same thing, add in a little more volume around the back of it. Maybe do one smooth pass real quick. And very quickly you can start to see things coming together. And, you know, obviously depending on what kind of werewolves you like, if you like something a little bit more from Twilight, then maybe this tutorial is not going to be the exact look that you're looking for. I'm going to be going for a little bit more of a rough character. That's my personal preference, but I also find it's a little bit more apt for sculpting. And since we don't have a lot of time, it's a bit more difficult to sculpt really smooth, natural looking characters. And so the rougher it is, the easier it is to sculpt in a short amount of time. And now there may be some people that disagree with me on that, but to each their own. So I'm just going to be shooting for a little bit more of a rough, kind of worn down character. And so I want a lot of wrinkles in the form, a lot of muscle flows, things like that to lend him a lot of character. And in this case, we are doing a male werewolf. That's not to say you couldn't do a female. Kind of work through some of these forms. Okay, here we go. Maybe do a little bit more sculpting in there. Just connect these muscles to the nose area. Maybe bring in the bags under the eyes just a little bit. I'll switch back to my crease brush and kind of redraw in some of those creases under the eyes. Switch back to the clay strips, maybe add a little bit more volume right down here. Maybe do a smooth pass. Let's maybe add in some of the starting forms of wrinkles along the back of the head. Here we are. Maybe we'll go ahead and flatten out the front of the neck just a little bit so we get more of this muscle flow right through here, these tendons. Then we'll flatten that out a little bit and then do another kind of tendon right through there. Get a little more natural kind of gaunt form to it. Save the file, and we're going to go ahead and jump up another level. And with that, I want to do a little bit of smoothing in some areas where maybe it's a little bit rough. So areas like this, maybe a little bit in there, a little bit in there. And then what I'll do, a little bit right in here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my crease brush again, but I'm going to decrease the strength just a little bit. And I'll go in, redraw or retrace some of these creases that I want to continue accenting. Like right in there. This one right in here. This one just a little bit, and then I'll smooth this area a bit. Also smooth this area just a little bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and draw with my crease brush in a positive direction to form the eyelids. And what I like about this technique is that it creates a nice sharp edge for the eyelid naturally, but still pulls the area up. And then I can draw above that for the crease along the top eyelid. There we go. And then we'll go ahead and draw along the bottom eyelid. And then we can reshape it any way that we want using the grab brush quite easily. Drawing some wrinkles around corners of the eye there. Go ahead and draw in a bit more around the ear. You can see this comes down. This will come through right here. Got the targus right in here. I'll go ahead and switch back to my draw brush, and I'm going to push in this area here around the targus for the ear cavity. I can go ahead and push in this whole area just a little bit, add in a little bit more volume, maybe smooth it out just a bit. Then I'll switch to my clay brush, kind of build that up. Then I'll build up this volume right through here. Maybe bring this down and up. And we're not looking for a super realistic ear or anything like that. We just want most of the main detail in there. I'll add in a little bit of an earlobe just by drawing down. Maybe add in a bit more form right there. Push some of this back, some of this back. Go and smooth out some of the back of the head here, and then work with some larger clay forms with maybe a much softer strength, kind of all in here. And most of our detail level is going to be done right here where we're at. If you remember, we only have one more level to go, and unfortunately I may have just crashed here, so I'm going to pause. Okay, and I did indeed crash, but luckily I had saved it just before. But like I was saying, most of our detail level is going to be done where we're at right now, and then we'll add in a little bit more because we've got one more level to go. We may have to, depending on the state of my machine, if I continue crashing, may need to just finalize on this level, which means we'll just remove one from our final werewolf sculpt, which as far as the final transformation is concerned is not a big deal. You know, we can always lose a little bit of the detail that we sculpted in. That'll make things a little bit faster even. So we'll just kind of play by ear and see how things go. But right now I'm just going to go in and keep sculpting. And so what I'm trying to do is just try and follow some of the muscle forms in the skin. I want to add in a little bit of a crease along the upper lip right here that you tend to see. And then it kind of evens out right in here, so I'll merge that a bit. Add in a bit more shape to the upper lip here. Go and use the crease brush and just draw in some creases on here. I can also increase the pinching on here, which will also help. It'll pull in the surrounding vertices to give me a better pinching effect if I choose to do that. And in this case, it actually works out pretty well. So I can just kind of pinch right in there. Maybe I'll smooth that just a little bit. Maybe I'll go ahead and decrease that pinching back to about normal. And maybe I can pinch a little bit along the bottom lip there. I'll pinch some right in there. Maybe smooth that a little bit. Pinch this through here, this through there. Smooth that. As you can see quickly, things are starting to take pretty good form. Maybe put a little bit of pinch right in this center of the chin, give him a little bit of a cleft there. We'll work on his eyes again. So again, I'm going to use my crease brush, draw down through there, add another one right through the center of the bag. Pull down his top eyelid just a little bit. We'll go and use my grab brush. I'm just going to pull in the center of the eye just a bit. Pull that in there. Maybe lower this, pull this side down a little, pull this up, this down. Just kind of reshaping the whole eye just a little bit. There we go. Go ahead and draw in crease right there. Draw it in there, there. We can draw in a couple little creases right along the brows. And we won't go too much further. We'll smooth some of that out. It's getting a little bit rough right in there. Let's go ahead and do a little bit of work on the nose here. So I'm just going to draw in a little bit of form right in here. Bring this up a little bit right in there. Let's switch to our draw brush, and using a small size, we'll just push in some of the nostril here, trying to give it a decent shape. Smooth out this edge just a little bit. Pull that down. And that doesn't look too bad. I'll use my crease brush, drawn a little bit further right through there. And then I think this is going to be pretty much it. Maybe I'll switch back to my smooth brush and just smooth that back out just a little bit. Maybe I went a little too far there. I'm going to switch to my grab brush again and just reshape the ears a little bit. So I'll pull this up, pull that down, pull that down. From the side, I can see that I really have kind of ignored a lot of the ear shapes, and so I'll just pull some of these areas out just to help get a little bit better profile on them. I'll use my clay brush again. Actually, I'm going to use my crease brush and draw in some of these forms. And we're going to go ahead and see about jumping up one more level here. There we go. And this will allow us to do a little bit more work right in the ear. So we'll push some of these back with my crease brush. Push some areas back right in here. Right in there. Maybe smooth that. Use my clay brush a little bit, add a little bit more form right to this edge, bring it a little here. Switch back to the crease brush and really just draw in right down through here, really crease that together. And like I said, we're not going to do too much more. Maybe we'll just add in a couple creases right in here. So there I'm just using my draw brush to kind of draw in some of that area and then push some areas back. I'll go ahead and switch to my pinch brush real quick, and I'm just going to pinch the edge of the eyelid just to make them a little bit sharper. Okay, and that doesn't look too bad, so I think we're going to go ahead and call it quits right there. So I'm just going to save this, and then in the final part, we will jump in and do the transformation of the actual werewolf for what you've all been hopefully waiting for, and hopefully will your patience, which is much appreciated, will be worth it. So thanks again for watching, and I will see you shortly on the next part.